Harry and Meghan have been accused of being climate change hypocrites after taking a private jet to a Katy Perry gig that was only 40 minutes away. Is it true or is it false?
Well, this has always been my thing with Meghan Markle, and I think it's why a lot of people don't like it. It's the rank hypocrisy of her. You know, like, this isn't the first time that she's been telling people that, you know, you've got to cut down on your carbon emissions, you've got to cut down and, you know, live within this kind of green bubble, and yet she's just blatantly ignoring her own advice. And I think this is the real reason a lot of people are just kind of sick to the back teeth of her.
Do you think any TV star would actually date a ginger unless they were Prince? Or Ed Sheeran?
Yeah, I mean, like, she didn't even pick the good one with the power. That was the problem. If you're going to pick a prince, pick one that at least he's got to become king.
And the one that made me laugh was when Harry, in his book Spur, claimed that he received fewer sausages for breakfast because he was not the future king.
I think for me, it's interesting that his PTSD has arisen from a sausage.
Yeah.
As opposed to maybe something that happened later in life. But, I mean, it is rank hypocrisy at the very most. But it wouldn't the others would say, well, but she's using her platform to further that most important message.
What, by going to a Katy Perry concert?
Oh, but she's great.
Well, Katy Perry, I think you'll find is like a firework. But Howard, is there an element here where the rich and the famous are hypocrites because that sets them apart? So they're able to say, well, you're not allowed to drive in London, you're not allowed to take planes anywhere, but I am because I'm better than you.
The point is, from my point of view, is why would you want to take a jet to see Katy Perry?
Sorry, Howard, let me stop you there. If I said to you right now that the prize for this show was a private jet flight to a VIP box at a Katy Perry concert, are you telling me you'd say no?
I'd definitely say no.
Oh, I don't.
But if you said Led Zeppelin, I'd be like...
It's like turning down the 3 Dart Challenge on Bullseye.
What's wrong with him?
I've got to be honest with you. I've got a friend of mine who's got a box at the O2, and he said, are there any concerts you want to go to? And I said, anything where there's free booze. I don't think he really appreciated the comment, to be honest.
I'm with you on that one, John. With you on that one.
Absolutely. All right, Pete, so have Harry and Meghan been accused of climate hypocrisy? Is it true or is it false?
I'm going to say it's true.
It's absolutely true! OK, so to Ben, the NHS has ordered trainee doctors to stop sexting and using Tinder at work. Is it true or is it false?
Oh, my God. Wow, where do you start with that?
Have you ever received a sext from a trainee doctor?
No, well, not this week. But I would say, actually, they should do that in a much uniformed platform that should be controlled. Yes, I would agree.
So you agree with sexting, do you?
Well, it depends who it's to.
Yeah.
Right, OK.
Oh, my God, that's because you were in the Navy.
Don't knock it till you try it.
Do you know, at the end of the Second World War, we had VE Day and VJ Day, and then when the Royal Navy came back, it was VD Day.
I can neither confirm nor deny that allegation.
This is quite interesting because a lot of the doctors have come out and said this is kind of like nannying and it's a bit kind of like a bit prudish and all the rest of it. But I have to admit, I don't think it's right that, you know, that doctors are on Tinder whilst at work. You know, apparently we're all massively understaffed and there's no money in the NHS, but apparently they've all got time to sit around and text each other.
Well, are you on Tinder?
No comment.
He wouldn't be on Tinder.
They must be doing it in between TikTok videos, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, to save the NHS.
Yeah. I'll tell you what, so I actually did join Tinder, but not for myself. I shouldn't.
Oh, really?
No.
Was it for a friend?
It wasn't for a friend, right? I'll tell you this story. I shouldn't have done it. But my office, when I worked for Breitbart, was next door to Conservative campaign headquarters. And I had a work phone, so I thought to myself, who can I set up a Tinder profile for? And it will geolocate it to Conservative campaign headquarters. So for about 18 months, Grant Shapps had a Tinder profile, courtesy of me. It had a lovely picture, and it was asking, and it listed his interests, and they were quite well. I'm not able to say on TV what those were. So if Grant Shapps watches the show, I apologise for that Tinder profile. It was in fact me. Howard, any thoughts?
Well, as you know, I'm a great fan of Grant Shapps when he was Transport, and now he's in...
I'm not. I got thrown out of the Conservative Friends of Israel event for heckling him at the conference this year.
Really?
Well, no, I wasn't thrown out. I was a guest of someone who sort of bundled...
Threw you out.
He said, right, that's it. That's enough, Lois.
There's no doubt about it. Grant Shapps is the world's worst transport minister we ever had. And that's the thing is, you know, it's very much close to my heart what I do in terms of campaigning. And the number of times I spoke with him, it was like talking to a... Well, I better not say what I'm thinking.
Well, I mean, we have diverted quite far off the topic. But I will say one thing, Howard. You know, this war on cars that's taking place in Britain, every single political party, apart from your own, appears to agree with it.
Well, that's what it says. You can't actually separate Labour and the Conservatives in that. Now, I think UKIP is actually... We're at one with that situation. But, yeah, you're right. It's the war on the motors. 37 million drivers. And you'd think... Well, mind you, he did do a little bit, didn't he, Rishi Sunak, by moving the 2030 ban to 2035. Oh, there's an election next year.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the amazing thing. All of this stuff's so unpopular. So what they do is mention it after the election. I mean, you'd have thought we lived in a democracy. But anyway, we have diverted quite far away from sexting and junior doctors to Grant Shapps and the war on motorists.
Have you ever used Tinder, like, properly?
Yes, as Grant Shapps.
No, have you ever used an actual dating app?
Let me tell you one thing. Right?
Oh, no, he diverted from the question.
When I say that I've never used a dating app, let me tell you, I'm definitely better in person. Because when people see a picture of a big, fat, white, pasty ginger bloke, right, they wouldn't swipe, but in person.
Sorry.
In person, I'm very
I've known you for a good number of years now, and you're better in person.
Take that as a compliment.
Yeah, I know. I will tell them that story. I will tell them. Yeah, I will. So, OK, I'll tell you the story that when that was the woke that was, which Pete's been with for a year, so congratulations. Yeah. When that was the woke that was, moved into the studio with all the other people from TalkTV, the producer said to me, don't make any jokes. And he listed the things I wasn't allowed to make jokes about in the green room before. And it included things like whatever. And then he said, actually, don't say anything that you find funny to any members of staff in the production team. And then he said, actually, don't say anything at all in the green room. It'll be all right. There we go. OK, so to you, Ben. Has the NHS issued guidance to junior doctors saying that they shouldn't sext or use Tinder? Is it true or is it false?
It's got to be true.
It's absolutely true! Keir Starmer has pledged to transition to being a woman in the hope of becoming Labour's first female Prime Minister. Is it true or is it false?
Oh, for God's sake.
We deliberately got that one for Howard.
You are talking about the next Prime Minister. Don't you think we should be a bit more statesmanlike?
No. He needs to be more statesmanlike.
Absolutely right. I mean, well, look, he still doesn't know what a penis is and what a vagina is. Can I say that now?
Yes, you can.
Yes, that's not a problem.
I mean, look, we've already said your surname, Cox. I mean, what's the difference between cocks and penises?
Well, I regularly go to very anti-ULEZ protests, and people say, get cocks in.
Yay! He did that without even consulting his notes. Well done. But on a serious note, I mean, this question, I think we all know what the answer to this question is, but the way that our body politic is just messing about with social issues like this has become incredibly dangerous. I just feel like all we are interested in now is all of these me, middle-class social issues, and we're not worried about dealing with real poverty that's out there.
Well, on a vaguely serious note, I'm 70 next year, and I'm looking back at what we've been talking about the last 4 or 5 years, and it makes me sick. And I want to get off this planet with the stupidity, the gender stuff, the LGBT stuff. You know, let's keep our sexuality and all that stuff confidential. It's between yourself and your partner or whatever they want to be.
Three-spirit pony.
Exactly.
Or your Tinder profile.
Or your Tinder profile, exactly. So it does. I'm afraid it sickens me, all of this.
Yeah, one thing I find interesting on this, sorry to interrupt the House.
No, go for it.
No, please.
While we're talking about the first female leader, there is a role open that's going to be taken, and that's Rachel Reeves, and she has the potential to be the first female chancellor. And the fact that this woman has received absolutely zero criticism is staggering to me. Let's not forget that she's allegedly kind of plagiarised an entire book, by the sounds of it.
Yeah, and admitted it.
And she basically admitted it. And this woman is going to be in charge of our economy, and she can't do basic addition. I find it very funny. She was on, I think it was LBC or something, being given this interview, and very cleverly Ian Dale read out a quote saying this is from a prominent economist, and it turns out that it was a quote that she'd actually said, and she just rubbished her own opinion. It was absolutely staggering. This woman, she was once called Labour's secret weapon. If she the secret weapon. Keep her more secret.
And I must actually come on to that situation because I was in Portcardi's house only a week ago and I spoke to a very senior Labour politician. It might have been someone you just mentioned. But anyway, they said, we're going to be behind the motorists. We're right behind it, Howard. And then the nose is getting longer and longer and longer.
And that's my problem with a lot of the Labour Party, kind of the kind of shadow front bench, is they're just not serious people.
No,
they're
they're
fundamentally
not
serious people. And Keir Starmer was supposed to be having another little reshuffle for his election campaign. I was like, you're just rearranging the chairs on the Titanic. It's a sinking ship.
But Ben, I think one of the things about leaving the European Union was that it's now exposed that our politicians are very, very poor. You know, they couldn't run a bath, let alone a country. And obviously Brussels was running things for us. Do you think that there's now going to be a natural process of politicians improving because of the level of scrutiny that's on them and because they have to run a country now?
You would hope so, but I think...
That's depressing.
Yeah, I think we're actually going to go through a process where that may happen, but not yet.
No.
And I think one of the big problems with Brexit was that we actually voted. We wanted to take back sovereignty. We wanted control of our own laws.
Absolutely.
We gave it back to the worst people going, and we didn't even realise that at the time. But we have such a poor, like you say, such a poor class of political class. And I don't see it getting better anytime soon, which is really sad.
I suppose if Keir Starmer, when Keir Starmer mucks it up, it's a battle between Andy Burnham and Sadiq Khan. So, Howard, thoughts on that? I mean, actually, presumably you like Burnham more because Burnham backed down on his low emissions.
He did do that, but only because he actually did listen to a public consultation, which is what Sadiq Khan doesn't. He's the most dishonest, and frankly, he's a pathological liar.
I happen to agree.
And that's why I'm standing. I'm no politician. I'm a public affairs campaigner, as you know. I'm standing because of the people are fed up to the back teeth what that man's done to London, and it's all through his dishonest policy. He even lies about health, fatality data. 4,000 people dying every year.
Yeah, it's one, isn't it?
It's one.
It's one.
Yeah, did anybody see that tweet he put out recently about the New Year's Eve fireworks displays?
Oh, what, my fireworks?
Oh, you saw my response to that?
I did, actually, and because I actually hadn't seen that tweet till I saw your response. And I was like, the arrogance of that, saying my fireworks display? Absolutely not. You can only get to call it my fireworks display when you're the one that paid for it.
Yeah.
If you're using Londoners' tax money to pay for something, it's all our fireworks display. I thought that spoke a very deep message about what Sadiq Khan is really like as a person and how it's ego.
I've got to be honest with you. I've looked at a lot of Sadiq Khan's speeches and a lot of his debates, and the reality is about this man, he is not actually arrogant and obnoxious in the conventional sense. I think he's a spoilt brat who has never, ever been told no by anybody. He's obviously been the golden boy of his family. He's always been, sort of looked up to, which is odd because he's only about 3 foot. But he's always been figuratively rather than literally looked up to. And I think that has led to him being... When the ULEZ charge thing came in and he was having problems, he was incapable of dealing with it, wasn't he?
Absolutely right, August the 29th. And it's interesting that first month of ULEZ charges, he's going to pay for the firework display.
But has Keir Starmer pledged to transition to becoming a woman? Is it true or is it false?
Obviously, it's false.
It's absolutely false!
That was The Woke That Was. Continues after the break. Welcome back to That Was The Woke That Was.
Suella Braverman has been criticised for saying being homeless is a lifestyle choice. Is it true or is it false?
Is homelessness a lifestyle choice?
I think it actually is, to be honest. And I think it's serious to discuss it because obviously there are people who don't have anywhere to live, people who sofa surf or whatever.
Yeah.
But people who literally live on the streets, very often it's related to mental health problems rather than actually an absence of anywhere to stay.
No,
Therefore, in a sense, it's a lifestyle choice.
No, I think you're absolutely right. I mean...
well, you've changed your mind.
No. I mean, in terms of specifically being on the streets as opposed to classified as homeless, because you're right. A lot of the people that live on the streets, they don't want to be in a hostel or they don't want to be in any of the other accommodations that's arranged for them because they can't deal with it. Because of the mental health stuff that's going on.
But aren't 40% of the homeless actually from overseas?
Yes.
Right.
And
okay. That certainly is a lifestyle
choice. On that point,
choice.
there is a huge issue with how local authorities and councils actually distribute the benefits to homeless people. So a lot of the time, it's in their interest to live in that way. And I think that's one of the big problems with this.
Presumably being an ex-serviceman, you've come across people who've had PTSD and end up on the streets. How much of a problem is it in the military?
I mean, it's very difficult to put a number on it, but the last number that I saw was around about 6,000 retired veterans of our own living on our own streets, rough.
That's across the UK.
That's across the
How
UK.
many, sorry?
6,000.
That's staggering.
Which is huge, really, if you consider we've only got 7,000 in the UK military as it stands
Yeah.
Yeah, I was going to say, if we look at the numbers of this overall, this is just in England, it's about just over 200,000 people sleep homeless up and down. It's about 1 in 250 just in England alone. But one thing that really annoyed me about this, when she said this, was too many people keep focusing on the lifestyle bit of it, and I'm seeing very few people coming to the table with solutions to fix the problem. As per usual, most people seem to be annoyed with what Suella Braverman said in terms of language, but they seem to agree with the point she's trying to make.
Right.
And it's the same when she said the hurricane of refugees. You know, nobody's coming to the table with solutions to fix the problems that she's raising.
There is a Manchester mayor candidate, I think his name's something Buckley.
Nick Buckley.
We've had Nick here.
Nick was on recently.
Well, he's actually got a solution. He actually is talking about having these warehouses with little sheds in them so they can keep their dog with them as well, because that's one of the things. Because at 9 o'clock, usually when they go into some hostel, they're kicked out the next day. And that's one of the problems. And, you know, they're taking drugs and their drink problems, all that sort of thing.
One of the big problems, actually, in truth, is the legislation, and there has been a debate about changing it, which says that if you permit drugs to be used on your premises, you are as guilty as the people using the drugs. Now, of course, what that means is no homeless shelter can allow people to use drugs on the premises. There has been a suggestion that maybe that should change because it's better for people to be sat inside using drugs than sat outside using drugs. But I think it is a difficult question.
Because then you'd have situations where they might, you know, they'd lose control, I think, of the actual
This is one of the
building.
arguments where Suella Braverman wants to start fining charities who give out tents, isn't it? Because she's saying you can't see what's going on inside a tent and people can overdose and it becomes a health and safety issue. And I happen to agree with her entirely on that. Whether you should fine a charity for doing it, I'm not quite sure.
That stinks for me.
Yeah, I have to admit, I don't really know where I stand on that.
He's got these shed ideas where they go into it and they actually have their belongings and everything. They even have little kennels next to them for their dogs and things like that. I think it's a start. It's something about giving a bit of dignity to start again.
It's coming to the table with an idea, not just just carping on the sidelines.
I worked for Westminster City Council, and what we did was, if you think about it, there was a lot of Polish people who came in when the EU expanded, and most of them had a great career, made a lot of money, admittedly undercutting a lot of British workers, which caused one or two problems. But they came here to work and they were genuine.
Working.
Yeah, they were working. But obviously a percentage of them ended up on the streets. When Westminster City Council started paying for them to have bus tickets back to Poland, oh, the bloody lefties went absolutely wild. It's a disgrace, you're deporting Polish people. And actually, these people want to go home. It was a generic impersonation. leave it alone. It wasn't anyone in particular. There we go. He really is the banker. Anyway, but they go absolutely crazy, and we were absolutely trying to help people. It's disgrace.
Andre, loose link, though. Can I just put on record that I actually have a real problem with camping anyway and caravanning? I think that actually should ban it. Like, it's I think awful.
Well, Jeremy Clarkson is the leader of the anti-caravanners.
Yes.
Yeah, but the problem is with Clarkson, I had respect for Clarkson. In fact, when I did my postgraduate in journalism, I said that he was my favourite Conservative commentator, and then he supported membership of the European Union. And then I started to believe Stuart Lee, who said, isn't it amazing that Jeremy Clarkson has all of these, undiluted, right-wing, unpolitically correct thoughts to a deadline for the Sunday Times? Amazing, really, isn't it? Amazing. OK, so has Suella Braverman been criticised over saying homelessness is a lifestyle choice? Is it true or is it false?
I would say that, yeah, possibly. Yeah, that is true.
It's absolutely true! OK, so now it's time for the scores with the Woke Wabbit! Oh, do I have to... Oh, for goodness. I quite like this news. Don't do that. Don't touch me. Don't touch me.
Safeguarding issue.
OK. So what do you think about Harry and Meghan taking a private jet? Presumably, you're furious about it.
No, absolutely not. I think if you look at the activism that they've done and if you look at the fact that Katy Perry is also carbon neutral. They're probably
Personally.
they've
trees.
probably actually helped the environment by flying to the Katy Perry concert.
OK, so it's fair to say that you have been a complete hypocrite on this issue. That's a big surprise. Wabbit, what are the scores?
0 points for everyone.
0 points for everyone! Hey! Very much muted applause there as I shuffle across in my seat. OK, so back to Pete.
Yeah.
Marks and Spencer's have been criticised for launching a Christmas advert which tries to cancel Christmas. By the way, I didn't ask you the other question.
I
didn't ask you the other question about burning flags because to be fair, I did feel a bit sorry for Marks and Spencer's in that case.
OK, so I have to. I saw this story, and the minute I saw this advert, and I was like, "Here we go. This is going to start kicking off." And I have to admit, I think it's a lot of hot mess over nonsense. One, there is no way this has anything.
Sorry. Is that a phrase? It's a lot of hot mess over nonsense.
No, I'm trying to make it. I'm making a phrase, and I realised as I was saying it, I've mushed two phrases together.
He's malapropping.
Well, that's what they say in Wigan. Other phrases in Wigan include, that's a tasty pie. OK, goodbye. That was your dad again.
We shouldn't call women pies.
OK, so yeah, I saw the advert and I was like, it's all got to kick off now. And first of all, people were getting annoyed by it, saying it's something to do with Israel-Palestine, but the thing was shot in August, so that can't have been true. But I know a lot of people saying it's about cancelling Christmas. They're trying to remove Christmas from a Christmas advert. And I actually disagree with them on this. I actually think the point of the advert is that you can celebrate Christmas however you choose to celebrate Christmas.
No, you can't.
No, I think you can. I think this attachment to certain traditions is fine. But with the certain traditions we used to have that we don't have anymore. And I think it's just how Christmas has evolved.
But what about the fact that the Christmas cards don't say Christmas on and they're not using Santa?
Well, whether you use Santa's a relatively new thing for Christmas if you really want to get into the traditions of it all. But I don't know. It's
new?
Well, yeah, Santa Claus.
How old are you?
32.
Listen, Pete's sat there going, I'm not into all these newfangled things like Santa.
Like electricity, yes.
No, but I don't know. It's just one of these things. I think Christmas cards as a tradition is slowly dying out. You know, there's lots of things that more.
That's because
No, it isn't. I get more Christmas cards now than I've ever got, and I send more.
By the way, of course.
You know, right, okay, right. This is flavoured by the fact that you're not dad yet.
Yeah,
right,
yeah,
okay,
might be.
because it's a very different Christmas when you've got kids, because they love the traditions, they love the things that are exactly the same every year. So when that elf was smashed in the Marks and Spencer thing, my daughter's face was. You know, how could you do that to the elf on a shelf? You know, it's sacrilege.
No, OK, so that aspect of it, I could appreciate that your views on Christmas change when you become a dad or a granddad or grandma, whatever. And yeah, I can get that.
But I
don't. But no, just for me, it's just one of those things.
Does your opinion change from becoming a dad to a granddad? Actually, don't answer that. It's not worth the airtime, is it?
It's not worth it, no. I'll move on from that one.
But I do get upset, and maybe it's just me with seasons greetings and all this sort of thing, and the idea that we shouldn't celebrate our traditions. I mean, remember, all those years ago, St. Nicholas gave presents to a group of prostitutes that he thought, that's true, that is genuinely true. He gave presents to a group of prostitutes, presumably because they were in poverty, but...
Maybe it's because he didn't have any cash.
Yes, the relationship with the prostitutes was unclear, but we have to give them the benefit of the doubt. Yes, OK, bye. Yeah, that was the ghost of the Saint Nick. OK, but has Marks and Spencer been criticised for removing Christmas from its Christmas adverts?
It has. It's true.
It's absolutely true. OK, Lily Allen has recorded a new song called Diverse Winterval to the tune of White Christmas. Is it true or is it false?
That sounds horrible. Probably true.
I mean, she is one of the biggest examples of people who is just a virtue signaller, isn't she?
Oh, of the worst type.
Yeah.
I mean, I can't even remember the amount of times that I've read or seen something about her when she's literally saying the absolute opposite of what every working man and woman on the street thinks.
Oh,
I mean, she is absolutely a joke.
Do you think that sometimes, Howard, the reason why people want to cancel things is because they don't like the people that enjoy it? So, as an example, with cars, like you talk about, people who like cars rather than people who use them for a functional purpose are not liked by the political left. I always got the impression that the main reason in favour of Foxhound bans was that they just didn't like people in the countryside. Is there an element of people getting into power now and almost like the third world using that power to abuse the people that they perceive not to vote for them?
Yeah, I will answer that, but I just want to go back one thing about cancelling someone. Can I just mention a certain person called Gary Lineker?
Oh, God. Oh, God.
I mean, sorry, but at Christmas, you see what he's coming out with. But going back to your point, yes, I think it is down to that. I think it's basically because I don't want that, I don't like that. That's my decision about it because I'm prejudiced against it. And that's what we're seeing right across. As I say, I'm an oldest person on this panel here. And I'm fed up to back teeth the way we're moving to a situation whereby we're making decisions on emotion rather than on the fact and on objectivity. And that's particularly true in terms of the motorist.
Yeah, absolutely. OK, well, so, Ben, I think you... Well, actually, I don't know if you get this one, but Lily Allen has she recorded a song called Diverse Winterval instead of White Christmas? Is it true?
I think it's true.
It is, in fact, false!
It should be true.
It should be true.
That was The Woke That Was. Continues after the break.
Will they break the gender norm and they never will conform? Then I'm binary. It's here! Now that's what I call woke.
She's always the person with the cervix to me.
44 smash hits, now with more inclusive lyrics. Man, I feel gender fluid. Iconic tunes updated for the modern listener.
Love is to the left of me, vegans to the right. Here I am, stuck on the M1 with you. Things can only get greater. I want to know what a woman is. Here in my car, I am killing the earth with my toxic exhaust. It's a selfish way to live.
No trigger warning required.
Oh, the wokey-cokey. Whoa, the wokey-cokey. Oh, my little Europhile, my Europhile. When you gonna follow me back, Ramona?
Now that's what I call woke. Not streaming now.
Welcome back to That Was The Woke That Was.
Right, so I think you've been prepping for this one, but OK.
Have I?
Sadiq Khan's ULEZ expansion raked in 26 million in its first month. Is that true or is it false?
Well, yeah. You want the answer to the question now? No. The thing is about
Pad it out a bit, you know.
Yeah, I've got to pad it out a bit. As you probably noticed, that he's introduced a scheme which is actually hitting the poorest and small businesses. All those sorts of things are happening in London. And when I get elected as mayor, I will get rid of ULEZ everywhere, not just the extension, and LTNs. And speed bumps and 20-mile-an-hour limits and all those.
Can I ask you this question? Because I was reading an article about this ULEZ charge, right? So there is a chap who is from outside London who managed to have all of his fines overturned on the basis that the signs do not say you have to pay a ULEZ charge. So normally when you go into anywhere, it says, if you park here, you'll be fined or pay and display or whatever. But all it says is ULEZ. So he successfully argued that because it didn't tell him to pay anything, he didn't bother paying anything.
Well, you're talking to a guy called Noel Wilcox, who...
the CSA campaign.
He actually runs a scaffolding business in North West London. And he actually took TfL to court and won, simply because the signs are unlawful, illegal. If you notice, the congestion charge got a big C on it. Well, that's what's got to be at least on the ULEZ and the LEZ signs, which is the commercial equivalent of ULEZ. And to cut a long story short, he won. He's still trying to get his money back from Sadiq Khan. And watch this space, there's a lot more to come about this.
So hang on a second. So he's actually won, but they don't want to pay him out?
No, he's something like, I think it's about £11,000 he's owed for his trucks, his scaffolding vans. And and the judge ruled in favour those fees and fines must be paid back to him completely. And it still hasn't happened.
I put him in touch with you 18 months ago, do you remember?
Well, did you?
Yeah.
Oh, come on! No, stop!
Give us a cuddle for that one.
No.
Stop. Well, I'm aware of that. It is Saturday night telly. I'll tell them. You introduced me to somebody once. It's not valid television.
Was it on Tinder?
It's rubbish. It's the sort of thing you'd expect on the BBC Sunday morning show. Right, it's rubbish. Nobody wants it.
Right, I'll bring it back to the question.
Yeah, come on, Pete. Help me out.
That's why I'm
Help me
here.
out.
OK, so the thing I find out interesting about this is the fact that they suspect it's going to run a bit of a surplus, and they say they're going to reinvest it back into the TfL. And I agree with Howard's reaction to that. I believe it when I see it. But the thing that really staggered me is I use the tube pretty much every day. Yeah. I don't drive, so the whole thing about ULEZ isn't really for me about the driving aspect of it. But the thing, I mean, the TfL itself, we really have to talk about its structure. The waste in it is absolutely staggering, and it's about time that I think we actually just scrap that organisation altogether and build something new, because it's simply not fit for...
Read my manifesto.
Yeah. Well, Pete and Howard, in fact, I'd be interested in your view on this, Howard. So, people who are outside London, all of these cities now, and in fact Wales, they've all come up with Transport for Greater Manchester, Transport for Wales. So they've all done the same thing. But I think there is a critical failing in this system. The problem is London Transport now is run by the people who came through the underground system. Effectively, most of the managers are people who love the underground. So what's happened is, effectively, London Underground has taken control of its rivals, which it's now effectively running into the ground. Because if you look at the roads, if you run a good road network, fewer people will take the tube. Therefore, you do not want to do that. And actually, it's almost like, say as an example, Manchester United buying up Manchester City Football Club. Do we actually believe that they would run the other football club for the purposes of that football club? What they'd actually do is run it into the ground. And I believe that actually this integrated transport policy, which Labour have been banging on about for years, is directly the worst thing you should do. You should have transport bodies competing against each other.
Yeah. Here. It should be competitive. And your point about the underground thing, about TfL actually dictating policy on the roads, is sickening. And you've got to remember, in the underground, the pollution there is 2,000% more than it is at roadside level.
You showed that. You had a special counter.
Well, it was an air quality meter, and I went down about 14 different tube stations down to platform level compared to roadside, and it averaged out at 2,000% more particulates, which are the most dangerous.
Well, my real worry about all of these low emission zones, ultra low emission zones, whatever you want to call them, is a situation that my dad's in, because I think it's a particularly egregious example, but I'll give it to you. So obviously my dad's in his 70s. You know, he's wondering whether it's worth buying a new car because he won't be driving forever. And he lives in a place called Goulburn, which is in Wigan Borough. Yeah. Now, Wigan, of course, is in Greater Manchester, but the nearest train station is Newton-le-Willows, which is in Merseyside. The nearest mainline train station is Warrington Bank Quay, which is in Cheshire. Now, if all three of them have a ULEZ charge, then you would be in the ludicrous situation of him having to pay, £12.50 for each of the three zones, even though they are all within, 2 miles of each other. Yeah. And that is a nightmare.
And don't forget, in London, we have congestion charge as well. You take the case of a midwife who works in St Thomas's Hospital, not far from here. That person did a night shift, OK, and they come in every night in their little Peugeot, whatever it is. It's a little thing. It does 80 miles to the gallon diesel, and it's passed all its MOT and smoke tests. And they have to pay congestion charge twice and ULEZ twice. And it basically... And the shift doesn't cover the cost of it. Yeah. Well, she's left the profession and moved out.
Surely none of this matters when we're all penned into our 15-minute cities. No. This is all hypothetical. Who cares about this stuff?
That's true.
But I do find it bizarre the way that we are so regressive now, this idea that... I mean, look, I don't have a problem with saying services should be within easy reach, though whether Amazon are going to do that or the government's going to do it, I think are two different things.
I know who would be better.
Yeah, absolutely. But this idea that you can't drive outside your own zone, it's almost going back to serfdom, where you have to get the local Lord of the Manor's permission to leave your community.
Absolutely right.
Yeah, but do you want your lap dancing club next to your golf club? That close?
Well, I do. I mean, most people don't. But,
they tested out our compliance in terms of zones and things during the COVID lockdowns, and a lot of us were extremely compliant. A lot of people loved it. A lot of women who secretly don't really want to be at work loved being at home. I did, right? And everything was immaculate, and everything, and everything ran properly, and I wasn't feeling guilty all the time. And a lot of people, really, really got a lot out of that. So they tested it. They tested it as a theory, I think. And then they think, right, now we're going to do the 15-minute, keep them all in, and all of you, all the time.
Well, don't forget LTNs was a temporary thing in COVID.
It was.
Yeah.
Temporary. And look, they're still there.
Well, I always go back to the old quote from Milton Friedman, there's nothing more permanent than a temporary government programme. It's one of my favourite quotes. But I do think you're right in a sense, though, is that a lot of people were overly compliant with it. But the thing you have to notice is all these things, LTNs, 15-minute cities, is brought in after an election. They never run on it as an actual policy. And that's the insidious bit of it, because they know that they can't win on this stuff. So what they do is they wait, they have the election 2 years later, that's when they bring it in. Then by the 2 years, by the time you then get to the next election, you're already used to it anymore, and it's not a political issue anymore.
Pete, does that suggest a problem with democracy itself? Because I worry about all this. I'm not one of these big conspiracy theorists, but it has to be said. It has to be said that, this idea that Steve Bannon put forward, the winner of the next election will be the party of Davos, which is basically all the leaders of all the political parties all agree on everything, so it doesn't really matter which way you vote anyway.
I do think there is an element of that, and I'm with you. I'm not a big conspiracy theorist on that kind of stuff, but I do think the real thing is, and I know, Lois, you've talked about this a few times, is about having referendums on this stuff. I'm not a big fan of referenda. I think they divide people unnecessarily. But on this stuff, it is a major lifestyle change, and you're reshaping communities. And I do think people have to have a direct impact and say on that stuff.
But Lois, I genuinely feel like we've gone as a society from being governed to being ruled. Now, I don't know if everyone would agree on the difference in language there, but when I was a kid, the government used to look after things that the public couldn't look after. So it would deal with problems that, and okay, even nationalisation, which I didn't agree with, but at least what they're doing is stepping in when a company goes bust.
Yeah.
Okay? Now, politicians get elected with a vision of how I should live my life and now want to enforce it upon me. That is a very different society to live in, isn't it?
It is a very different society. And, we've talked a lot about Davos and conspiracy theories and stuff like that. But when you have every leader of every country going to a jolly up once a year where, there's lots of conferences and people say, this is what we want 15-minute cities, we want people to work more from home, we want families to be smaller, we want people living more in cities and stuff like that. And then suddenly they are the policies that are being espoused by everybody at the same time. And as you say, about how you live your life personally. Because if they get rid of all jobs, which, there was a conference the other day saying about how AI will eventually replace all jobs, you will be relying on a basic, what's it called?
Universal basic.
Yeah, which they're trialling in certain places in the UK. If you're completely dependent on that money, and you're not going to be tweeting something bad about the government. And also, who then decides whether you're allowed to have kids or not? Because if you're not putting anything into society, then they can tell you if you're able to breed or not. It's a very, very, very dangerous...
Yeah, and of course, they're talking about all this blockchain. They're saying that, look, obviously, your money could be reallocated by the government, but only in emergencies. I'll tell you what, that's an incredibly, incredibly worrying thought. I mean, I just think that now it's the idea is that you do as you're told, you get on with, everybody monitors you. I mean, the Conservatives once said that if you vote Labour, there will be a government inspector in every home. There is now, in reality, a government...
Called Siri.
Yeah, absolutely. OK, so...
It doesn't matter, though, does it? Because the Labour Party and the Tory Party are both... They are cheeks of the same ass.
Absolutely.
And what people have forgotten in this country is that politicians or government, they govern by consent.
Absolutely.
And that has been lost.
Yes.
And that's one of our biggest problems. No one believes. Our politicians don't believe.
Going back to what you were saying then about being ruled.
Well, no one believes in what we should be.
But this is the question, and it's a difficult question, I think, for me and Howard, and presumably you guys as well, with these Blade Runners who've been damaging and destroying ULEZ cameras. Now, look, the social contract theory says the following, that if your government becomes omnipotent, if your government becomes dictatorial, if your government specifically acts against the interests of the people, then you do not have a duty to obey what they say. And so what the Blade Runners effectively are saying is, we've had a consultation. Everybody knows that London is against this ULEZ charge. The fact that the system enables it to come in anyway is not a reason to respect the existence of the scheme. Now, it's difficult, isn't it? Because they're also committing criminal acts.
And dare I say, I know a lot of them. And they do contact me on a regular basis. And I can't condone unlawful activity. Of course I can't. But the fact is, normal, law-abiding people are so pissed off with what's gone on. They've actually taken it into their own hands to actually voice their opposition to this crass, stupid, dishonest, cash-grabbing, dishonest approach to actually...
Do you know the one that dressed as a dinosaur?
Well, there's 5 of them. There's 5 dinosaurs.
Five dinosaurs.
5 dinosaurs.
5 dinosaurs.
You don't
Reminds me
like
of Jimmy
Khan.
Knapp.
yeah.
Sorry, Lois?
You don't like Sadiq Khan very much.
Well,
do you?
he didn't send me a Christmas card last year.
Didn't he?
Oh,
I
he's
sent you a
cancelling
Christmas card.
Christmas.
Yeah,
isn't he?
yeah.
Just
I've got to be honest with you. In the 2010 general election, I reported to Sadiq Khan to the police twice. He was never criminally prosecuted. It's fair to say, if you think he hates you, then believe me, he has had a visceral hatred of me for absolute years. But OK, Howard, has he raised 26 million in his first month of ULEZ? Is it true or is it false?
True.
It's absolutely true! So the final question is to Lois.
Oh.
Hamas leaders have called for a ceasefire within the Labour Party. Is it true or is it false?
That's what's got
I actually, I know that this isn't true, and this is from our friends at the Upper Lip. Actually, it's one of their stories. But yeah, do you know what though? It wouldn't surprise me because they do seem pretty in bed together, don't
It was like when the Al Gore and George Bush election, where Robert Mugabe offered to send election monitors into America.
You know things are bad, don't you?
I thought, to be fair, Robert, that is top trolley.
Yes.
That's about it. But actually, there is a serious problem that the Labour Party's got with being anti-Semitic and being pro-Palestinian. I have to say, there is a debate about whether the Labour Party is anti-Semitic or anti-Zionist. I personally think it's anti-Semitic, and I'll tell you why. Because of this obsession with Israel, which predates this counter-terrorism operation that's taking place. The fact that there's no interest in what's going on in China with all the Muslim community being put in concentration camps, but they're obsessed with Palestine.
Well, they're obsessed with Palestine, and the amount of Muslims that are killed by other Muslim nations and nobody even raises an eyebrow. I mean, for example, in Pakistan at the moment, they're bulldozing the houses of all the refugees, of the Afghan refugees, and are actually sending them back to Afghanistan with nowhere to go in the middle of the winter. I haven't seen any protests about that. No, because they hate the Jews. The Labour Party do. I'm sorry,
I've got to say, if we look at Keir Starmer throughout this, I mean, this has been his biggest test, I think. And I have to admit, he's not done as badly as I thought, but let's be honest, I think it's nothing but a C- average. I mean, he bungled a PR trip to a kind of Islamic centre in Wales. I mean, that was terrible what they did to that poor imam, I have to admit. And then, you know, I think he's had a number of councillors quit. I think they've lost control of Oxford Council because they've all switched parties or whatever. You know, and
I'm not being funny, but when you've got people in Burnley, which is, you know, one of the hearts of the Muslim community in Britain, when you've got them complaining, I wonder how many Oxford councillors actually have a genuine and long-standing interest in this subject, and how many are just professional leftists who are just going crazy.
I've got to say, there has been, I think it was just the other day, there was a mass walkout of some other councillors. And Keir Starmer has a huge problem with this in the Labour Party, because the one thing we have to remember that this is also about votes. And a lot of the Labour constituencies have a huge Muslim population to them. I mean, they'll say, oh, it's not about politics, it's about principle. This is about politics and politics alone.
Well, in fact, I'm going to ask everybody, but let's go to Ben first. Is being anti-Semitic a vote winner for the Labour Party? Do they see this as, look, we've got a large Muslim population. They crassly assume that every Muslim is a big racist towards Jewish people, something I don't accept, by the way. But they literally just go, well, let's just say this. It'll play well in our heartlands.
I think there is definitely an element within that party that believe that is the right course of action to take, to pander to that side and try and, you know, appease their Muslim vote, which is a really dangerous position to take up. But what really irritates me about Starmer is that for ages we've been hearing how he's so good for the Labour Party, how he's fortified their position, he's brought them together. He's been wallpapering over the cracks.
Exactly.
And this is a clear example of that.
But do you know, Howard, Margaret Thatcher once said that she never had any respect for Neil Kinnock, because she said people respect him because of the way that he's changed the image of the Labour Party. But she said, I thought it was a fundamentally disreputable process, because what he was doing is what Starmer's doing, which is attempting to pretend the Labour Party is something different to what it is in order to get it elected on false pretences.
Well, I'm sorry, it's embedded in their party. It's absolutely in their DNA. It always has been. I mean, just look at Corbyn and I speak to a lot of others, you know, even when this wasn't actually the main story that's happened since October the 7th. And bear in mind, when I stood up and gave a conference speech at the Reform Party on October the 7th, that's when the Hamas actually bombed Israel on that day. I stood up and said, I'm proud that I am a Thatcherite, and everyone stood up and cheered me, and that sort of thing. And from that point of view, I mean, what worries me about it this big time is that it is a vote winner for Labour. They do see it as a vote winner. So to answer your question, it's a big worry.
Yeah.
And I'm actually asked, as potentially the Mayor of London next year, but hopefully it'll happen, how am I going to bring these two communities together?
I mean, I don't envy anybody having to do that, but this isn't just a new thing, like you said, for the Labour. But let's look at the Batley by-election, where there was a huge play on race politics. Let's look at, you know, the way the Labour Party have been campaigning for quite some time now has been heavily on race and religion. I mean, I can't remember her name. It's, I think, Shamina Mahmood, who's the director of campaigns for the Labour Party. She actually had struggled denouncing an Islamic mob outside a school in Birmingham.
Oh, that's right.
And she said, I find it hard to disagree with them. If you've got somebody like that running on national campaigns, you have a major problem. And it annoys me no end that woman is never held accountable for that comment.
But is it
because if it was a Conservative or a white man that said something like that, he'd be drummed out of public life quicker than you can say it. And I thought it was absolutely disgraceful. There are certain people in very powerful positions in the Labour Party, and I think you're bang on here, that, you know, the Keir Starmer supposedly changed it. It is nothing but wallpaper. And you're bang on that. And it's about time he was called out for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
well, I'm
yeah.
going to give you a round of applause for that.
Yeah, absolutely.
But anyway, so Lois, has Hamas called for a ceasefire within the Labour Party? Is it true or is it false?
I know this is false, so I'm going to say false.
It's absolutely false! OK, so what are the scores, Woke Wabbit?
Oh.
Right, so what do you think about Keir Starmer then, you know, not running the Labour Party very effectively?
What do you mean? I have no idea what you're talking about.
Do you think the Labour Party's anti-Semitic?
No, I think they're more united than ever.
Oh, absolutely. OK, now, the prize today is a private jet flight to a Katy Perry concert. And if you believe that that's true, you'll believe absolutely anything, including that the Labour Party's not anti-Semitic. But given it's a fictional prize and it's a fictional quiz, who's won it?
Me, I want to see Katy Perry.
The winner this week, unbelievably, is the Woke Wabbit! So thank you so much to Lois, thank you so much to Howard, thanks so much to Ben, and congratulations to Pete. 1 year on the team. He's been absolutely fantastic and we love him to bits. That's why I'm going to run off now and take him for a drink. Goodbye.
People of Britain, do you fancy a good dose of common sense before bed? Because the independent Republican Mike Graham is now in prime time. We still cover all the stories that matter and put the world to rights. We just do it a little bit later on. So don't miss the independent Republican Mike Graham Monday to Thursday nights at 9 p.m. right after Piers Morgan Uncensored. Yes, the revolution will be televised.